All right, tonight we have, let's see, this is a one speaker meeting, and please welcome our guest speaker tonight, Illene.
We're playing dodgeball after the meeting? Yeah. Pirate Steve, yeah. My name is Illene, and I'm an alcoholic. I want to thank Richard for inviting me to come over here tonight. God, I haven't been in this room in years. Really glad to be here. I love Alcoholics Anonymous. I like your enthusiasm. It's a little overwhelming, but I like it. I'm the face of the new old-timer. When I got sober, all the people with my length of sobriety were actually old. But I'm coming up on 34 years at the beginning of March. And that's just astonishing. That's just astonishing. I have been in Alcoholics Anonymous sober 10 years longer than I was alive when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. And so I've spent the majority of my life here in AA, and I consider myself to be a really fortunate person. I want to congratulate all the birthday people. I was really struck by what you said, Jay. The two hardest things that I had to learn how to say when I got here were, I don't know, and will you help me? I came into Alcoholics Anonymous like this: help me! Stay as far away from me as possible, but please help me. I was not a cuddly newcomer. I was not a vision for you. Much of it had to do with how I looked. I weighed about 230. I was wearing a $5.99 granny dress from Zodi's, which was like Walmart, and a pair of flip-flops, and a bad haircut that I think I performed on myself, and spotty hygiene and a really bad attitude. And I'm here to tell you, I don't know why anybody would come to AA with a good attitude. I mean, think about it. I think a lot of people do an imitation of a good attitude, but I didn't have a good attitude because my life had been really shitty for a long time, and I really didn't see how coming here would change any of that. And it wasn't always that way. I'm a Jew from Idaho. If you know anything about Idaho, you know how weird that really is. My parents were from the Bronx, but they ended up in Idaho. And my father was in the Marine Corps, and he became a minor league baseball announcer and disc jockey in Boise. And my brother and I were both born there. And we left when I was 4 years old, which was long enough to give me the anecdote. I don't remember anything about Boise. I just like to tell you I'm from there. And I grew up in Southern California. I grew up in the San Fernando Valley in West Van Nuys, which I understand now has the fancy name of Lake Balboa. And but it was West Van Nuys, which in my mind is Lower Reseda. And I was the star of my grammar school. I excelled at everything but physical education and interpersonal relationships. And I peaked at about 11 and a half, and it was downhill from there. And it was also Jay who talked about, you know, that alcoholism is no respecter of persons. Alcoholism doesn't care who you are. I've been to thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous in the last 34 years. And most of the rooms look just like this. Everybody is here in Alcoholics Anonymous. Young and old, rich and poor, gay and straight, every ethnicity, every religious background or not. You know, alcoholism doesn't care who you are, but if you've got it, you've got it. And the problem with me, because, you know, the great paradox of my life is I was born with everything you were supposed to have in order to make it. I was born with looks and talent and brains and opportunity, but I was also born with alcoholism. And from the minute I started to drink, my life went off in a completely different direction than the direction in which it had been heading. Our book talks about how we're men and women who like the effect produced by alcohol. I love the effect produced by alcohol. And Richie said it's fine to talk about drugs here. I love drugs. And because they help me get there faster. They helped me get there faster. And basically, you know, I did everything except for heroin, but what I finally settled on, what I really liked, I'm a Ripple and Reds kind of gal. I'm a tequila and Quaaludes kind of gal. I'm the kind of gal who just really doesn't want to be here, is what it comes right down to. And I have two speeds. I'm either in the corner drooling, or I'm operating a motor vehicle. And usually in Topanga or Laurel Canyons, because that's where I needed to go to get the stuff that I needed and the people I needed to see. And, you know, I know there's a God. There's living proof that there's a God, because I didn't take myself or anybody else out in those canyon drives. But, you know, I grew up during the 60s, and the 60s were an incredible generation, you know, for budding alcoholics like myself. Because the 60s were the first generation before or since that said, get as fucked up as you want to. It is the preferable way to live. You know, I mean, there has never been a generation before or since like the 60s. You know, and Alcoholics Anonymous is filled with people who came here. I mean, I think there's two kinds of alcoholics, basically. There are the kinds whose lives were fairly well together, and as a result of their alcohol and or drug use, their lives began to fall apart. And then there's a group who could never get it together in the first place, and I'm one of those. I didn't have time. I started to drink when I was about 11 and a half years old. I loved alcohol. I loved what it did to me and for me. You know, I don't identify. You know, there's you know, the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous is our basic text, and I identify with almost everything in that book, but there is one particular paragraph with which I do not identify at all. And I don't have the book memorized. You know, some people do. I don't know what the point of that is, you know. As my sponsor used to say, the drunks are waiting. And anyway, but I memorized this paragraph just because it means something to me. And it's the first paragraph in chapter 3. And it says, most of us have been unwilling to admit we were real alcoholics. No person likes to think he is bodily and mentally different from his fellows. Therefore, it is not surprising that our drinking careers have been characterized by countless vain attempts to prove we could drink like other people. To my knowledge, I never tried to prove that I could drink like other people. I didn't want to drink like other people. I wanted to drink like you people, and I wanted the other people to leave me alone so I could just do what I wanted to do. And the truth of the matter is, in the 12 years that I drank and used, I made sure most of the time that I got to do exactly what I wanted or thought what I wanted to do, what I found out later I needed to do, because everything that got in the way of my drinking eventually had to go. And what's happened to me in sobriety is that everything that's gotten in the way of my sobriety has eventually had to go. Sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly, but eventually it had to go. I'm no rocket to stardom, and I'm so grateful for that, because I am still going to meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous, like my friend Matt, like Tim, like Bruce back there. I don't see a lot of people that I know that are sort of my contemporaries in this room, but still, like Neil, like Richie, you know, people who have some time. I'm still going to meetings because I understand that this is not a destination, it's a journey. And I go to meetings for a lot of different reasons. Maybe I'll just jump all over the place. I took a lot of acid, so, you know, if you took acid, you understand that not all of my synapses fire anymore, at least not all at the same time. So I'm just going to jump all over, and most of you will probably follow me. But anyway, I go to meetings for 4 separate and distinct reasons. I go to meetings because I need them. I'm one of the lucky members of Alcoholics Anonymous. I've never been able to labor under the illusion that I do not need this program. In my 34th year of sobriety, I go to a minimum of 2, but most often 3, 4, or 5 meetings a week. Not because I don't have anything better to do, not because I don't have a life, but because I need to go to meetings. The second reason why I go to meetings is because I like them. I like them. I like the people, I like the meetings. Sometimes I hear something so stunning in the room, you know, I can't stop thinking about it for weeks at a time. You know, my old friend Serenity Sam, who died last year, used to talk about, you know, if he'd been home watching Slip-O-Vision, he might have missed it, you know, and because I got sober when there were no VCRs, no DVRs, I missed 10 years of prime time television. We were sincere. Anyway, you know, and there weren't very many meetings either. You know, you went at 8:30 at night or you went at noon, and that was about it. But anyway, I was in a meeting a few months ago. My home group is Life After 10 on Tuesday nights at 14th and Ocean Park. And, you know, and with almost 34 years, by far, I don't have the most time in that room, which is one of the reasons why I love it. But a few months ago, the leader was there, and the leader shares for like 10 minutes. And the leader was a woman named Lila R., who some of you might know. And she said something that I found so profound, I could almost barely catch my breath. And what she talked about was the idea that people like me come to Alcoholics Anonymous and actually begin to cooperate. Cooperate. What an interesting word, cooperate, which means that I cooperated with the program. I cooperated with my first sponsor, who I was terrified of and used to call bad two-part names beginning with mother under my breath. But I cooperated. I cooperated because the truth of the matter is, even though you would have had to put burning bamboo shoots underneath my fingernails to get me to admit how happy I was to be in a place that was this lame, this unhip, this warm, this good, this decent, this kind. Inside, I was so thrilled I could hardly contain myself. I could hardly contain myself. And I began to cooperate with Alcoholics Anonymous. Not the first time I came. I came in the summer of 1974, when I was 23 years old. And there were not a lot of young people in AA. And there were not a lot of attractive young people like we see in AA now. And I came here thinking that I hadn't done much because I hadn't had a lot of time to go to a lot of mental institutions or penitentiaries, and this was the scale by which I was comparing myself to others. You know, AA is the only place on earth I know where people play "Can you bottom this?" You know, it's the only place on earth where you can get a lot of prestige out of being in 47 nut houses and 22 jails. You know, you try that material at the high school reunion and they back off, you know. They are not interested, you know, but here it means something. So I thought that I came here having really not done anything because I was so far out of touch with reality, I didn't realize what had happened to me out there. And the kinds of things that happened to me is I got gang raped under the influence of alcohol and barbiturates and got up the next morning and went to the beach as though nothing had happened, because when you're a piece of crap, you don't go to the hospital or call the police. Kind of things that happened to me is I got pregnant on a one-night stand when I was drunk. And I was so far out of touch with reality, I refused to believe I was pregnant. I was 4.5 months pregnant before I got a test. And also, it was 1968. And you couldn't really do anything about it in those days. And I had a son in 1969 in March, and I gave him up for adoption, and I didn't think about him again until after I got sober. And I drank and used for 6 more years after that. But I got here thinking that not much had happened to me, and I am no stranger to those words in our big book that are pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. But what I had to do when I was out there is I had to somehow make the incomprehensible comprehensible. I had to make the unforgivable forgivable. I had to make the unlivable livable, because I didn't think there was anything I could do about the situation I was in. I wasn't quite sure what was wrong with me. I was not familiar with the terminology alcoholic. I didn't know what an alcoholic was. I had never heard of Alcoholics Anonymous to my knowledge, except maybe I had seen Days of Wine and Roses. AA was much more of an anonymous organization back in 74 and 75. You know, rock bands weren't breaking their anonymity en masse in People magazine, you know, that kind of thing. And so, you know, it wasn't in the news like it is now. And we're not an anonymous organization. We're just supposed to be anonymous people. But I didn't really know. But the central office here in Southern California was really smart. And what they used to do, and I don't know if they still do it because I can't stay up that late anymore, but at about 3 o'clock in the morning, one morning, I was passed out in front of the TV, and I happened to come to, and on the screen was a single card. It wasn't a commercial, it was just a card, and the card said, "Do you have a drinking problem?" And then it had the name and number of Alcoholics Anonymous. It was right there on the TV. So I called them. I don't know why. It was in July or August of 1974. I'm not sure. And they got a nice person, and the nice person said they would have somebody call me, and they had somebody call me, and that somebody offered to take me to a meeting, and I said, "No, thank you. I'll get there myself." Because I don't want you to help me. And I started going to meetings in 1974, and thank God that we have the tradition that says that the only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking, because I didn't stop drinking. I went to meetings loaded for 5 months. I leaned against walls with my arms folded and glared at people and dared them to come near me, and most of them didn't. There were 2 really mean guys in Hollywood AA where I got sober. They're both dead now. Their names were Lee Larson and Irving Nemi. And they liked me. They saw right through me. They could tell how terrified I was, because that's all it was. It was terror masked as hostility. And they talked to me. But when the holidays rolled around in 1974-75, I wasn't sober, and I can't really think of anything more depressing than being an Alcoholics Anonymous on the holidays if you're loaded. Just didn't seem that attractive to me at the time. And so I left, and I had some vague plan to come back after the first of the year, but my birthday is March 3rd, so it took slightly longer than I thought it would. My plans rarely ever worked out when I was getting loaded. You know, I had good intentions. I had very bad follow-through. If my late mother was still talking to me in those days and she might invite me to dinner, I would say that I would come. I meant it at the time. And then somebody would say to me, "Would you like to go to Mexico?" And I'd get in the car, because it just seemed like a good idea at the time. One of the things that still means the most to me after all these years of sobriety is that my word actually means something. I told Richard that I would be here this evening. I told him that I would be here at 6:45. At 6:43, I pulled up in front of this building, because I said that I would do it. And I'm still moved by the fact that my word actually means something, that all the things that I've learned here in Alcoholics Anonymous I've been able to carry out into the world, and they have served me well. I've had the same job for over 21 years. And I'm almost 58 years old. I expect it to be my last job, and it's a fabulous job, a really fabulous job. And I got it as an indirect result of a 12-step call that I went on in 1985. That's how I ended up in the profession that I'm in, and I didn't go on the 12-step call to get a job. I went on the 12-step call to make a 12-step call. And I just showed up when somebody asked me to, and something else happened after that. My mother died very suddenly, May of 2007, Memorial Day, and my daddy is 87, and he's alone, and my parents were married for almost 63 years. I used to joke, you know, they were set, their names were Harry and Harriet, and my daddy's alone, and he's a prince among men, and he could teach newcomers in AA how to show up. He gets up every day and he gets dressed and he does things whether he wants to do them or not, and he says yes to invitations, and he's been a reserve police officer forever, and he's, you know, going to join their speakers bureau, and he walks the 9-hole golf course twice a week, and he's lonely. And because I'm a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous, it occurred to me that maybe I should stay with him a few nights a week. So I stay with my dad 2 or 3 nights a week since my mother died, because I don't feel that an 87-year-old man needs to be alone all the time, nor does he need to learn how to cook or do his own laundry. I just don't think so. And, you know, and because I'm sober, and because, you know, and it's inconvenient. It's inconvenient. It's not easy to go back and forth, but sometimes you just do things because they're right. Not because I'm a wonderful person, but because it's the right thing to do, you know. But I learned how to do that here in Alcoholics Anonymous. Sometimes the things that we're asked to do are inconvenient. I'd rather be home watching television tonight, to tell you the truth. I'm tired. But I told Richard that I would show up here, so I did. Anyway, when the holidays rolled around in 1974-75, like I said, I didn't feel like I would want to be around here, and so I was persuaded by my then therapist. Now, I'm not here to knock therapy at all. It's been very helpful to me since I've been sober. You'd be amazed at how well therapy works if you actually tell the truth. And that really helps a lot, you know. And our program has no argument with therapy. I've never used it as treatment for my alcoholism. For that, I have Alcoholics Anonymous, the steps, my incredible sponsor who has 46 years of sobriety. So, you know, but therapy's been very helpful, but it was not helpful then. And I had a string of really weird therapists. This guy was the weirdest, you know, and the last of that particular group of therapists. His name was Sid, and he was blind, and there's nothing wrong with being blind, but we used to smoke dope and neck during my sessions. And needless to say, I was getting an enormous amount of assistance from Sid, and Sid convinced me to go to this place called the Benneville Pines for New Year's weekend that year, and I every once in a while run into people who know what it is, but it's a church camp, but it's run by the Unitarians, who are a notoriously loose bunch. And anyway, I spent the entire weekend completely inebriated, having a three-way with two sex therapists from Carpinteria, California, whose names were Bert and Sally. Don't ask me why I remembered their names. I guess I thought I'd look them up at a later date. Now, I never did, not because I thought there was anything wrong with having a three-way. I still don't. But I didn't look them up because they were creepy. And as were many of the people that I knew when I was drinking and using. Let's just say the quality of my friends has improved since I got to AA, for the most part. Anyway, I came back in March of 1975. I swear to you, I wouldn't have given you 2 nickels for my success here in AA. Honest to God, I wouldn't. But I came back, and I had 2 things going for me. I was really tired. I was 24 years old when I got sober, and I looked older than I do tonight, and I have not spent one moment in the shop. Thank you. And and the other thing that I had going for me is I had gotten this perception of AA that I hold to this day. You know, AA is good, it's decent, it's wholesome, it's unhip. People seem to be nice to me. And I honestly felt that if I could turn myself over to what Alcoholics Anonymous had to offer instead of what I was coming from, somehow I knew that if I was able to admit that I wanted what you had instead of what I had, that nobody here would laugh at me. Because I always thought that people would laugh at me if I admitted that I wanted anything decent in my life. I really felt that I had long since passed the point where I deserved to have anything decent in my life. And yet the people in Alcoholics Anonymous seemed to be nice to me, and it was hard for me to trust that. Because where I was coming from, if you did something nice for somebody, it's because you wanted something. And if somebody did something nice for you, it's because they wanted something. But I knew that I had nothing to offer, so I couldn't figure out why the people here were being so nice to me. But what I realized is that the people who were being nice to me, like my first sponsor, who was a guy named Bob Earl, the reason why they were being nice to me is because years earlier when they came to AA, people had been nice to them when they had made it equally as impossible as I was making it for those people. I was very lucky. The day after I came back to AA, I went to a meeting at the old Radford Clubhouse in North Hollywood. It doesn't exist anymore. And that guy, Bob Earl, he backed me up against the wall in that meeting. He had met me the year before, and he said to me, "Look, punk," he said, "you have a serious problem with alcohol and drugs, and you'd better damn well get sober or you're going to die." And then he said to me, "And if you don't get sober, I'm going to break your jaw." Now, I don't know what you would have thought. I thought he cares. You know, I'd heard that you cared. And then I wanted to know why, you know, and I remember I called him up, you know, about a month after. Here's the miracle. I took his phone number. People had given me lots of phone numbers the year before. I had not called one person. But I called this guy, and the real miracle was that I called him a second time, because the first time, completely unsolicited by me, he started telling me what to do. Now, I don't know what you're like, but, you know, it says that defiance is the outstanding characteristic of the alcoholic. I don't want anybody to tell me what to do, but I really do. But I want you to think I don't want you to tell me what to do, but I really do want you to tell me what to do, because quite frankly, I don't know. You know, I love when old-timers get up here and they go, the longer I'm sober, the less I know. And I think, shit, haven't you been paying attention? You know, there is a lot of good information here. When I got here, I was clueless. I was smart as hell, but I was clueless. I had no idea. I mean, seems to me when I was new, I called Bobby every 5 seconds to ask him what my next move should be, because I honestly didn't know. And the things that he told me when I was new, he told me I should go to 7 to 9 meetings a week, be responsible for my chair and my ashtray, thank speakers whether I think they have anything to say or not. Get a big book, read it, get a commitment. Told me I had a car, and I was really pretty useless, but I had a car and I could drive other people to meetings, which was a thought that just appalled me, because I didn't like people and I didn't want them in my car. And fortunately for me, everyone that has ever helped me in Alcoholics Anonymous, up to and including my sponsor, Julie C., the Great White Goddess, she who must be obeyed, that's what I call her. She calls herself Julie. 46 years, active member, honest and forthright, smarter than me, not afraid to tell me the truth. That's why she's my sponsor. She's been my sponsor for almost 26 years now. They've never been the least bit interested in how I feel about the direction they're giving me. They simply don't care. Because Alcoholics Anonymous is a program of action. This man over here talked about it being a program of action. It's a program of action. It's not a program of osmosis. We don't get it just by sitting in the seat. We get it by taking actions. And when people say, if you want what we have, and you're willing to go to any lengths to get it, what it means is you're not going to get exactly what I have, but you're going to get your own version of whatever it is that I have, which is a life that is worth living because I am clean and sober, and because it has some meaning now. Because I've been able to be of service, because I've been able to show up, because I've been able to have an expansive life. You know, I mean, my life was so small. I thought I was free when I got here, but how free can you be if you can't move, you know, a mile away from the liquor store or the connection? You're not free. You are not free. At least I wasn't. I wasn't free. And I was completely a prisoner of the bondage of myself, my self-seeking, my selfishness, my self-consciousness. And I don't feel that way anymore. I don't feel that way anymore. The two overwhelming feelings I had when I came to AA were utter and absolute disappointment with the way that my life had turned out, and absolute and total self-hatred for who I had become. And I don't hate myself anymore. And I'm not disappointed in myself anymore. Because I have learned that by self-forgetting, by turning my attention outward, that can change. They used to say around here that you cannot think yourself into right action, but you can act yourself into right thinking, and that's exactly what I've done here. You know, in the back of the book, they have the third appendix. It's called The Spiritual Experience, and all they're talking about in those 2 pages is a change of attitude. I've had a change of attitude. When I got here, I was a miserable malcontent. I was a negative person, and I've become a fairly positive individual since I've come to AA. I'm not perky. You know, I hate that word, almost as much as I hate the word ointment. That's a bad word also. There's just certain words, they rub you the wrong way, you know, and there's a few. You know, and what I've been given here in AA, man, I've been given the keys to the kingdom, but I've also been given real life. And in real life, things happen, like your mother dies. Like I was in Texas speaking at a conference. I got home at 5 p.m. My mother was dead by 7:45, and she wasn't sick the day before. But this happens. I've had a number of orthopedic surgeries. It seems like every few years the warranty runs out on one of my parts. And, when I was 50, it was my left hip. When I was 40, it was my right posterior tibial tendon, which then collapsed, and then I had to have my right foot rebuilt, and, it's all just stuff, man. It's all just stuff. And the last 2 years, there's been a lot of stuff. I had this foot reconstruction surgery, and it was a nightmare. I mean, it was 6 weeks of not being able to put any weight on my foot, 6 more weeks of wearing a cast, 3 months of not being able to drive. But the blessing was that the first 6.5 weeks, because I live alone, I stayed with my mother and father with the help of a nurse, a person that my boss provided for me. And who knew that 4 months later my mother would die? So I had those 6.5 weeks with my mother that I got to spend, which I wouldn't have otherwise been able to spend. So for me, the surgery was a complete blessing. Just want to talk about one or two more things. If you think that there's going to come a time when you're going to get your life tied up in a nice, neat little package, where nothing's ever going to seep out the edges and life is never going to intervene again, forget it. God has a way of flinging what I like to call the celestial monkey wrench into the mix just to see if we're paying attention. And on July 4th of 1996, I got a whopper. I was sitting on my couch. I'm glad that it was on July 4th so I could remember. But I was sitting on my couch, drinking a cup of coffee, staring out the window, pleased that I would have 4 days off of work, thinking at some point I'd get up, get the stuff for the salad that I promised to bring to the barbecue. And my telephone rang. And it was a woman, and she said, "My name is Julie Jones, and I'm a private search investigator from Seattle, Washington, and I've been asked to locate you." I had no idea why she was calling. Then she said, "Is your name Eileen Waterstone?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Does the date March 28th, 1969 mean anything to you?" And then I knew, and I burst into tears, and I said, "Oh, is he in Seattle?" And she said, "Oh, no." She said, "We do this all by computer. He's in your area code." My son was living 1.5 miles away from me 27 years later. I went to pick him up. 2 days later, he looks exactly like me, except for he's 6'3", half Mexican and a guy. Just in case any of you know him, his father's name was Alfred Gimpy Ortiz. Somebody just stepped forward. I was afraid to look. Anyway, Anyway, he was in and out of the program for about 12 years. Now he has a little over 2 years. Some of you may know him. His name is Aaron P. or AJ. Great big guy, handsome. Some of you may know him. And I gave him a chip at Life After 10 in October for 2 years. And, and when he was drinking and using, it was very difficult for us to have a relationship. In fact, we didn't have one. And we're trying to forge a relationship again, and it's pretty amazing. He's become a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, Before he was special, his case was different, but then he got a sponsor and he started working the steps and he started helping other people and started doing the kinds of things that I've had to do to stay here, and he's been able to stay here, and isn't that amazing? The third reason why I go to meetings, getting back to that train of thought, is because as my sponsor, Julie C., the Great White Goddess, says, that's where they keep the newcomers. Not being in the habit of going to bars, I generally find mine here, and I have never felt that the point of AA is to get yours and split. The point of AA is to get yours and give it back to somebody else. That's the point of AA. And the fourth and most compelling reason why I go to meetings is because I don't look like an alcoholic. I don't act like an alcoholic. Everything that I have in my life is a direct result of being a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous. Not because God rained specific gifts down on my head per se, but because I learned how to show up at my job. I still have the same job for 21 years. Do you know that there have been maybe 4 occasions in 21 years where I've actually told my boss how I'm feeling? The rest of the time is, I'm just fine, thank you very much, how are you? Because I can take it here, it's not his problem. You know, I don't bring my neuroses out into the world, or at least I try not to. I try to bring it here or to my sponsor. You know, and I'm not well. I'm never going to be necessarily. I mean, there are people who say they're recovered. There are people who say they're recovering, you know. But I feel that I have a daily reprieve based upon my spiritual condition. Based upon my spiritual condition. And one of the things that's helped me the most with my spiritual condition is practicing what I like to call spiritual activism. Our new president talked about this yesterday, about being of maximum service. That's what he talked about in that speech, asking everybody to make sacrifices and be of maximum service. And that's what we do here in AA. Everyone here has an equal opportunity to be of service, to help other people. I derive tremendous benefit from helping other people, and a side result of that is I have been able to allow other people to help me, because I understand what a gift it is when other people allow me to help them. So when I allow other people to help me, when I lower my false pride, when I say I really need help, I'm giving other people a gift, because I believe that they benefit as much from helping me as I do from helping them. I don't know what I would have done the last couple of years if I hadn't been a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous, if I didn't have this fellowship, if I didn't have people who showed up almost every single day after I'd had the surgery and was stuck in the house, the people who drove me everywhere I needed to go because I couldn't drive for 3 months, the people who showed up when my mother died and continued to show up when my mother died, who invite me and my father for every occasion and don't, you know, make sure that we're not alone on holidays and other occasions. And, you know, the generosity of the people in Alcoholics Anonymous is incredible to me. You know, I really feel like I've landed in my own little slice of heaven here. And, you know, if I drank, I would have to give all of this up. And I'm not willing to do that today. I really appreciate you having me. Thank you very much.